You don't feel it as pressure. You feel it as a strange obligation. As if no one is forcing you, but refusing is impossible. As if you're being treated well, yet somehow it makes you feel heavier, not lighter. And you can't quite put your finger on what's wrong. Because formally, everything is right. Formally, it's even better than what others have. The boss doesn't yell. Doesn't humiliate. Doesn't apply pressure openly. He smiles. Supports you. Says he believes in you. And that's exactly why you end up deeper inside the system than those who get shouted at. The problem isn't rudeness. The problem is access. Not fear, trust. Not pressure, a soft takeover. People think a toxic boss is dangerous because they break you directly. But that's a primitive level of control. It's visible. You can recognize it. You can push back against it. A different type is far more dangerous. The one who doesn't break you, but integrates you into their system so deeply that you start supporting it from the inside. Now let's break down how it works. First, friendliness as the entry point. He doesn't just act normal, he creates a sense of exclusivity. He says, I see potential in you, you're not like everyone else, you're someone I can rely on. You feel recognized. You feel singled out. You think it's an honest evaluation. In reality, it's attachment conditioning. You're not just being evaluated, you're being tagged as a resource. Not a compliment. A marker of ownership. Second, support as a tool of obligation. He helps you. Guides you. Covers difficult moments for you. You feel gratitude. You think it's genuine human care. But gradually, an invisible balance appears. You start to feel like you owe him. Not because you were told to, but because he's done so much for you. This isn't help. It's an advance payment on control. Third, the absence of hard boundaries. He doesn't demand directly. He asks. Hints. Leaves space. If you can, it would be great, I'm counting on you. You perceive it as freedom. But in that freedom, you take on more than you actually should. Because you don't want to let him down. It's not an order that makes you overwork. It's your desire to live up to expectations. This isn't flexibility. It's control being transferred inside you. Fourth, personal connection as a reinforcement mechanism. He takes interest in your life. Remembers details. Acts like you're almost equals. You feel closeness. You think it's a normal human connection. But that's exactly what blurs professional boundaries. And at some point, you can no longer separate work from the relationship. You don't want to disappoint a boss anymore. You don't want to disappoint your person. This isn't empathy. It's a merging of roles. Fifth, implicit expectations. He rarely states requirements directly. But you start anticipating them in advance. Predicting. Adjusting. Adapting yourself. You think it's professionalism. In reality, it's a gradual loss of autonomy. You stop working based on tasks. You start working based on the system's mood. This isn't efficiency. It's adaptation to hidden pressure. Sixth, the transfer of responsibility. If something goes wrong, he doesn't blame you. He says, well, you decided that yourself, I was counting on you. And you take the blame on yourself. Because formally, the decision really was yours. You think, this is fair. But this is exactly how the system removes responsibility from itself and leaves it with you. This isn't trust. It's risk being delegated downward. Seventh, the formation of an internal observer. Over time, you no longer need external control. You monitor yourself. You push yourself. You speed yourself up. You don't allow yourself to stop. Because his voice is already inside you. His expectations. His gaze. You think it's discipline. In reality, it's an embedded control mechanism. This isn't growth. It's internal colonization. And this is where the full picture comes together. None of this is random personality traits. Not, you got lucky with a boss. This is architecture. Friendliness opens the door. Support creates obligation. Freedom blurs boundaries. Closeness removes distance. Implicitness forces you to anticipate. Responsibility stays with you. Control moves inside. And in the end, the system no longer needs rigid management. You become its carrier yourself. Now, an important shift. The way out is not to start conflict or break relationships. And it's not about searching for the perfect boss. They don't exist. The way out is different. Stop confusing attitude with contract. Stop perceiving attention as obligation. Stop assuming that if someone speaks softly, less is expected of you. Start seeing structure where you once saw emotion. Separate roles where you were offered fusion. Reclaim your right to boundaries, even if no one formally violates them. Stop guessing expectations. Work with what is said, not what is felt. And most importantly, stop paying for someone else's convenience with your inner freedom. This isn't about fighting. It's about clarity. The world won't change. These kinds of bosses won't disappear. The system won't become more honest. But you can stop being inside it as a dependent element. You can see where interaction ends and capture begins. And in that moment, something simple returns, something that was quietly taken from you. Control over yourself.
You work more than others. You do things faster, more precisely, without unnecessary noise. You don't complain, you don't create conflict, you don't demand anything. And that's exactly why you're standing still. From the outside, it looks like a misunderstanding, as if you were simply overlooked, as if just a little more time, and everything will change. But the problem isn't that you're not seen. The problem is how you're seen. Not as a candidate for growth, but as a component that already fits perfectly into the system. People think the system promotes the best. In reality, it promotes the manageable. Not those who deliver results, but those who are easy to control at the next level. Now let's break down how this works. You're given complex, urgent, high-stakes tasks. You handle them quietly without unnecessary questions. You think, this is a sign of trust. But from the system's point of view, you become a load-bearing point that cannot be moved, because too much depends on you. This isn't recognition, it's fixation in place. You don't bring up salary, don't argue about deadlines, don't ask for resources. You think, this is professionalism, but the system reads it as a lack of pressure, risk, and any need to change something. This isn't maturity, it's ideal manageability. You deliver more than others and faster than others, you think this is your main asset. But that's exactly why you're left untouched. Because your promotion would break the current efficiency. The system doesn't invest in growth if it reduces output here and now. This isn't a paradox, it's calculation. You don't talk about yourself, don't highlight your contribution, don't document results publicly. You think results speak for themselves. But in the system, those who don't speak have no voice. Only those who shape perception do. You execute, others define. This isn't modesty, it's a loss of position. You don't ask for a promotion, don't define your next step. You think they should recognize you on their own. But the system doesn't read silence as depth. It reads it as absence of a request. And that means there's no reason to change your role. This isn't patience. It's a stop signal. Gradually, you stop being a person with potential. You become a function, the one who always delivers, the one who can be relied on. You think this is respect, but in reality, it's depersonalization. You're valued not as a source of growth, but as a stable mechanism. This isn't status, it's fixation. And now the picture comes together. You're not stuck by accident. You're fixed in place by the system because you fit it perfectly. You're efficient, quiet, you don't create tension, and you don't demand change. And the system doesn't move what works without resistance. Here's the turning point. The problem isn't that you're not good enough. The problem is that you're too convenient in the current configuration. The way out isn't to work even more, and it's not to wait until you're noticed. The way out is to stop being invisible, start documenting your contribution not just internally but in the open. Stop delivering results without context. Start setting boundaries even if it creates tension. Stop confusing silence with professionalism. And most importantly, start defining where you're going, not just what you're doing. This isn't playing politics, it's reclaiming your weight. The world won't change. The system won't suddenly start promoting the strongest. People won't become more fair. But you can stop being a convenient function inside someone else's structure. You can step out of the position where you're used because you don't resist, and return to a position where you're considered because you define yourself. Not loudly, not aggressively, but clearly. And at that moment, it's not the system that changes, it's your place within it.
You stay when others leave. You take on more than you were asked, you cover other people's failures, and you don't ask unnecessary questions. You call this loyalty. And for a long time, it feels like your strength. But inside, a strange feeling pojawiaється, as if you're giving more than you're getting, as if you're valued but not promoted, as if you're needed but not growing. And this isn't a contradiction, it's the system. The problem isn't that you're not valuable enough. The problem is how your value is being used, not as a resource for growth, but as a tool for stability. People think loyalty leads to trust and development. In reality, it often leads to fixation and exploitation. Not because you're weak, but because you're convenient. You stay after work when needed, handle urgent tasks, adapt to other people's deadlines. You think, this is a contribution that will be noticed. But the system reads it as the norm, as a baseline that is no longer up for discussion. It's not extra effort, it's your new minimum. You don't argue, don't create conflict, don't set hard conditions. You think, this is maturity and professionalism. But the system sees a lack of resistance, which means no boundaries, which means the workload can expand without consequences. This isn't loyalty, it's open access. You're given more responsibility, more complex tasks, more critical areas. You think this is a step toward growth, but along with responsibility, you're not given more influence. You are accountable, but you don't decide. You carry, but you don't control. This isn't development, it's downward redistribution of weight. You start to be seen as the person who won't fail, the one people turn to at the last minute, the one they can offload urgency onto. You think this is trust, but in reality, it's the system becoming dependent on your predictability. And the more reliable you are, the less incentive the system has to change your position. This isn't recognition, it's fixation. Gradually, a shift happens that you don't notice right away. You stop evaluating whether it's fair. You start evaluating whether it's convenient for others. You stop asking, why me? You start asking, if not me, then who? This isn't responsibility. It's a shift of your center. At some point, you find yourself inside a structure where your loyalty works against you. You hold the system together, and the system holds you in place. This isn't an accident, it's architecture. Loyalty reduces resistance. Lack of resistance increases workload. Increased workload makes you indispensable in your current role. Indispensability blocks movement, and you stay. Not because you're weak, but because you fit too well. Now, an important turning point. The way out is not to become harsh or cold, and it's not to stop doing your job well. The way out is to stop giving your loyalty to the system unconditionally. Start distinguishing where your responsibility ends and where someone else's convenience begins. Stop automatically agreeing where there is no clear agreement. Stop confusing reliability with the obligation to save everything around you. And most importantly, reclaim your right to choose where you invest your effort and where you don't. Loyalty without boundaries turns into a tool of control. Loyalty with boundaries turns into strength. The world won't change. The system won't stop using convenient people. The rules won't suddenly become fair. But you can stop being the channel through which those rules operate. You can remain strong, but stop being convenient. And in that moment, a shift happens that isn't visible from the outside, but changes everything. You stop being a resource that is simply used, and become a person who has to be reckoned with. You're not just tired. You're drained to the point where even rest doesn't bring you back. You open tasks and feel no resistance. Not because it's easy, but because there's nothing left inside to resist. And at some point, a thought appears. Something is wrong with me. I've become weaker. I've lost my edge. I can't keep up. But the problem isn't you. The problem is how this is designed. Burnout feels like a personal failure, as if you just couldn't handle the pressure, but it's not a failure, it's a result. Not an accident, a structure, not weakness, a scenario. People think burnout is when there's too much work. In reality, it's when your resources are systematically drained without any point of recovery. It's not overload that breaks you, it's the lack of an exit from it. Now let's break down how this is created. First, the volume increases. You're given more tasks, tighter deadlines, higher expectations. You think it's temporary, just a phase. But temporary never ends. The workload becomes the background. This isn't a peak, it's the new normal. Then the boundaries blur. Work starts leaking into evenings, weekends, the spaces between everything else. You think it's just a busy period, but it has no end. There's no place left where the system doesn't reach you. This isn't busyness, it's the absence of an exit. Next, control disappears. You're responsible for results, but you don't influence the conditions. Deadlines come from above. Resources don't increase. Priorities shift without explanation. You think, I just need to organize better. But the problem isn't organization. The problem is that your leverage is gone. This isn't responsibility. It's load without power. Then comes devaluation. You close tasks, solve problems, carry difficult parts. And in return, silence. Or a restrained, okay. You think, that's just how it works here. But this is how the link between effort and recognition gets erased. You invest and receive no return of energy. This isn't a modest culture, it's a broken feedback loop. And the next step is predictable. You start reducing your internal response. Not because you want to, but because otherwise you won't last. You stop fully engaging, stop caring, stop fighting. It looks like apathy, but in reality, it's a defense mechanism. And here's the key moment. When you have no energy, you don't argue. When you're exhausted, you don't resist. When you're drained, you agree faster than you can think. You think, I'm just tired. But the system gets the ideal state. An employee who doesn't conflict, doesn't demand, doesn't change the rules. Not because they agree, but because they can't do otherwise. This isn't a side effect, it's a convenient outcome. And now the picture comes together. The workload becomes constant. Boundaries disappear, control is gone, feedback is cut off, your response fades, and in this structure, you don't collapse instantly. You shut down gradually, first from emotions, then from meaning, then from yourself. That's burnout. Now, an important turning point. The way out isn't to pull yourself together and work harder. And it's not just taking a few days off. The way out is to start seeing where your resources are being taken, where workload comes without boundaries, where responsibility comes without influence, where effort isn't returned with recognition, where there's no point at which the system stops pressing on you. And then, not to be a hero inside it, but to stop automatically accepting it as normal. Don't give all your attention away without limits. Don't agree to conditions that erase you. Don't confuse patience with the obligation to endure everything. This isn't about weakness. It's about reclaiming control over your resources. The world won't change. These systems will continue to exist. The workload won't disappear on its own. But you can stop pushing yourself to the point where you have no choice left. You can stop earlier, see earlier, react earlier. And in that moment, a shift happens. You stop being someone who is driven into burnout and become someone who understands how it's done. And that means you're no longer so easy to control.